Hey guys, Tiago with Classical Technology here. Today, I got something pretty cool to show you guys, and that's going to be some really awesome keyboards. Be Quiet, yeah, that's the brand that does like PC cases and power supplies. They're doing keyboards now. I was super interested when I heard about these because I know they make very high quality stuff. I've always used their fans, their components, the PC cases have always been super unique. And I thought, what are they going to bring to the keyboard world? Well, the two of them we're going to look at, it's going to be the dark mount that I have in my hands right here, as well as the light mount. That's interesting. Light and dark is certainly a theme that they've had going on for a long time. You'll have the dark base, for example, for their PC cases. Obviously this dark mount keyboard is going to be the one that has, the more features per se, more adjustability than the light mount one. Very, very interesting. And now let's hear a word from our sponsor, VIP-CDKdeals.com, a Windows Pro CD key. Add to cart, you put in code CC20. This will also work on Windows 11. You want to go into your settings in Windows, change and adjust your CD key, click activate, and now let's go back to the video. So to explain sort of their lineup here, there are two keyboards, the dark mount and the light mount, and then each one is going to have the option of two different, key actuation. So I actually have the little paper here. You have your silent linear, which is going to be your orange. So that's going to be a little bit smoother typing, a little bit, more linear if you've had it on other keyboards. And then the darker one is going to be here, as you can see, the silent tactile. So it's still going to be silent. That's basically the theme on both of them here. As you can see, they're both silent. One is going to be more tactile, a little more responsive maybe depending on how you type. The other one more linear if you want like a smoother velvet-like experience. I mean, when I found out Be Quiet were doing keyboards, I was like, all right, they're going to have to be quiet, right? They're going to have to be silent. That's definitely been a pretty big theme. Their power supplies are silent. I mean, their cases, the silent bass, all those have been, very quiet. Early on, they would have, the sound isolation and the soundproof stuff in there. And that's something this keyboard has too. So they probably learned a lot about that. It has a lot of dampening, a lot of like sound absorption. And you would think that, as much as some people like really loud, clicky keyboards, and I like those as well. I was surprised at how satisfying that a really well-built keyboard is that is silent, but it still feels like smooth, like velvet and butter. You really have to feel these type of keys to, especially when there's that type of dampening and everything underneath. It just feels such a pleasure to type and to write. Both of these keyboards will come pretty much factory lubricated out of the box. There are some custom keyboards that that's enjoyable too. You buy a keyboard and you build it yourself, but then you may have to lubricate the switches. You may be there for ages toying with how you want it to feel. And if you're an enthusiast, that's great. Like, I've built my own keyboards too. It's, it's a very rewarding, but sometimes you want a keyboard that's just great out of the box. And that's going to be sort of what this gives you, along with the flexibility of having the different. Still talking about the noise levels. Obviously, it has stabilizers to help also with the, continue on sort of, the noise and silent level. Because the two things I'm concerned about here are going to be how it feels, obviously, to type. That's the most important thing. And then secondary is going to be the noise profile. Because it's not like super loud and clicky, for example, doesn't mean that the softer actuation and with the feel don't combine to give you like that same satisfaction. And that's like a what I could describe almost as like velvet or like a luxury type material. If you've ever, put your hands on like a really well-made shirt or a jacket or something like that, that you can tell is just like, very high grade material. That's what it feels like kind of typing on this. Here, I also have what they show as the 3 layers of the sound dampening. So the first one, you have a layer of foam. That's going to help with the sound dampening. And that goes between the top plate and the PCB. And then you're going to have the second layer of foam beneath the PCB. And then you have a final layer of like what they call a super thick sound absorbing silicone. That goes inside the bottom case. Silent linear, the orange switch. And I'm going to see it. It's almost impossible to, even for me to hear it. It's so quiet, but I'm going to try to hit it near the mic. Listen. Very, very quiet. Be quiet, if you will. Very, very quiet. So that's an extremely silent switch as well. And then here, I also have some samples of what some of that, what the foam and the silicone looks like. So this is going to be sort of, part of that sound dampening. Really, really cool. Even this material feels great. Like it just feels so smooth and high quality. It's usually something you don't touch, obviously, because it's going to be inside the keyboard. But that's basically what it looks like. So that's a lot that goes into it. And this is like, this is hefty too. It's not light. Just this silicone here. Look at that. That's, it feels hefty. It's heavier than some of the, like an Apple keyboard, for example. It's heavier than this thing. It feels like may not actually be, but it feels heavy. And sometimes with the weight, it's what you want in the keyboard. Weight helps to keep the sound dampened. It gives it that luxury sound, if you will, that luxury feel, and it doesn't sound cheap and hollow. So very high quality, even for these sound dampening things. Like that's pretty incredible. Even this feels like a very good material. Then of course you have the keyboard itself, which is, also has nice density. This is going to be, of course, the dark mount and, the little bit shorter version. We're going to get into that, of course, because you can make this, a full keyboard here. I just took out the tab on the side. You can extend it. This comes with a plethora of accessories, if you will. But it's a very simple, elegantly designed keyboard. There's nothing, it looks super professional and, super gamer-centric as well when you have the little light right up there, especially glowing in that sort of be quiet orange. Looks really, really nice. So it can be a nice clean gaming setup or a professional setup. And then as I type on the keys here, super nice and responsive. Very, very good. But really the smoothness of it is really what gets me. Very satisfying to type on. You're obviously going to get your little user manual here. And this does have software, of course, the I/O center. That's where you can update your firmware and also other customizations with the keyboard itself. In the box of the dark mount, you're also going to get the armrest here for those that like to put your hand, your wrist rest, if you will, the wrist pad. And this material is super smooth. Like this feels like the keyboard sounds. And of course, for those people that absolutely must have it, you have your additional keys here. If you want to have I know there's some people that don't want a smaller keyboard, and the way that you do this, you don't have to leave it, it pops out just like the other one right here. And then there's a little hinge at the bottom that you can open and close it, and it's going to slot right next to the keyboard. There's a slot there, and it connects via USB. And then you can put the keyboard together like so. And then look at that, it stays in one piece. Now this is now, basically, so now this now becomes, a full-size keyboard. You have access to everything and it's connected, so it's not something like janky on your desk or anything like that. It locks in place here by this mechanism, as you can see. So you can just, basically, and it attaches in place by this mechanism here in the back. And, this easily, if you need to pull it out, you can pull it out. And then you can just put this back in the box if you're not going to use it. And then this has, obviously, a lot more functionality. It's going to have your extra keys. And listen to that. Even these buttons are the only things that are more, loud and audible. So the keys themselves are just like the keyboard. But then you have these buttons here that you can map using the software to different things, different shortcuts and whatever else you may need. Listen to that. Almost sounds like a clicky controller. If you want to check out classical controllers, that's my other channel on clicky controllers, where I do controller reviews. And this is technically kind of a controller too, because you can use this for PC games, right? You can use just this. You don't even need a mouse for some games. Obviously, you might need a mouse for most games. So that's going to be probably the biggest accessory that you're going to want to pair to this. Is going to be this. For people that need this and for extra functionality, that's really awesome that you have the choice. Sometimes I like to have more space on my desk and have just the smaller keyboard. But when you're like in work mode and you need those extra keys, like there's no way around it, right? But the attention to detail is really great here, because not only do you get this additional pad, but look, you also get the accompanying wrist rest for this. So that way, if you do make it larger, your wrist isn't just on because this piece here is the size of the keyboard without this, right? And then you add this, what do? You have that space. Well, look at this. You just attach it magnetically right to the bottom there. Look how awesome that is. And that way, then you have the full keyboard with the wrist rest. And first of all, aesthetically, it looks good. And then obviously, it's going to be ergonomically much, much better. So then you have this right on the side and it can connect to the keyboard and everything sort of, flows nice and easily and magnetically connects. So that way it's easy to, move around when you have to. So that's a pretty interesting suite of features. And this kind of harkens back to a lot of what Be Quiet does. Let me give you an example with their PC cases. You can invert the motherboard on a lot of them. So this shows you that that customizability kind of plays out in the keyboards that they do as well. This particular one, the dark mount, the light mount already comes as the bigger full-size keyboard, but the dark mount, you can have it regular or not inverted per se like their PC case, but you can add something to change the functionality, add to the functionality of the keyboard. When you're looking at the back of the keyboard, you'll notice that it has two additional little like USB-C slots there. So the main one is in the middle. So you have to be wondering what's that for? Well, that's going to be for this. This is going to be what they call the numpad dock. So this is going to be USB-C on the bottom, and you can put it on the left and right. And look at that. Now you have this little dock here. And it has a screen, and this is going to be media control. You can see the buttons here. You have the the mute, the play, fast forward, go back, volume down and volume up, and it's a wheel which is super nice to use, very, very fast. When you're playing a game and you need to lower the volume a little bit or raise it, it's super nice to use this, or when you're working or editing a video, whatever you may be doing. So that's why the dark mount is certainly going to be the premium keyboard. And then they have the light mount, which is obviously still very well made and premium. It's just a different feature set, and it's going to come in at a cheaper price as well as this keyboard. And that one is going to be the full-size keyboard as well, and that's going to be not having the sort of the removable number pad or even that dock. That's going to be more of a standard keyboard, and then the star of the show there is going to be just the actual feel of the keyboard. And once again, on the light mount, you're going to be able to get both the linear silent switches as well as the tactile silent switches, the orange and then the black ones. So that's going to be something that these two keyboards share in common. It's going to have the same two key types available, the the silent orange, the tactile black. It still has the three layers, the two layers of foam above and below the PCB, and then the silicone, of course, for that sound dampening. So in terms of those features, it's going to be very similar to the dark mount itself. They're also going to come, pre-lubricated, the switches from the factory. So the keyboard's basically, ready to go as soon as you get it. And it also has the stabilizers that are sort of tuned for noise reduction, for being smooth and having less noise as well. Basically, in every part that would create the noise, Be Quiet tried to figure out what they can put there and what they can do to make it a much smoother and quieter experience. So while the light mount doesn't have sort of the removable parts of the dark mount, it still has your media controls. It's going to have your volume wheel. You have the 5 different macro keys as well. So you can still have a lot of that functionality if you don't need something that's going to be even more customizable. And for that, then you have to go to the dark mount, which you have more media keys. You have the numpad lock. You have the numpad dock, and and you can have the flexibility of making the keyboard smaller if you don't want the numpad. But if you want a standard keyboard that just feels great, that's where you would go for the light mount. And when you're gaming, you want something with these type of PBT caps and something responsive with switches that have good actuation force, feel good, and you're going to be able to play without any issues. So overall, both of these keyboards are great. Going to depend on the features you want and the price. Let me know what you think down below and what type of keyboard you're using. So that's the Be Quiet light and dark mount. I want to thank Be Quiet for sending these to me to review. Remember to subscribe, and I'll see you guys on the next video.